In the dead of night, a remote village in India is swallowed by monsoon rains. The power is gone. Rain pounds the ground so hard, it drowns out everything else. Inside their homes, families lie awake in total darkness, listening to the mountain groan somewhere beyond the trees. And then, through the storm, one sound cuts through: a 5-month-old puppy, barking relentlessly. No one understands why, no one knows what it's seeing, but that single, frantic barking is the only thing standing between them and something in the dark hurtling toward them. This is Monochrome Documentaries. We bring history's overlooked heroes to center stage. To understand what happened that night, you first have to understand Siyathi. It was a small village tucked into the hills of Himachal Pradesh's Mandi district, where life clung to the mountainside as tightly as the homes themselves. The slopes were steep, the views were beautiful, and for the people who lived there, the mountain was not just scenery, it was life. Every monsoon, the rains arrived and turned everything green again. The hills filled with water, the rivers swelled, the village came alive, but everyone there knew the risk. Too much rain, and the mountain can move. Siyathi was the kind of place where a neighbor's harvest problem was everyone's problem, where debts were repaid in labor, and a bad season for one family meant a harder season for all. Among them was Lalit Kumar, a farmer whose days moved with the land, planting when the rains came, resting when they left. A few months earlier, his brother had come home with something unexpected tucked under his arm: a puppy. His name was Rocky, 5 months old, small, restless, always moving. He chased insects, ran through the grass, slept wherever he got tired, just a dog. Nothing about him stood out, and nothing about that monsoon season suggested it would be different from any other. But the rains did not stop. Day after day, they kept coming. The ground soaked deeper, the slopes grew heavy. The mountain held steady just long enough for everyone to believe it would keep holding, until it didn't. June 26, 2025. The night did not arrive quietly over Siyathi. The rain was already heavy by then. Not the kind of rain that falls and passes, the kind that keeps coming, hour after hour. Hard enough to blur the edges of the village, hard enough to turn the paths slick and the soil soft beneath every step. By midnight, the storm was no longer just weather. It was a force pressing down on the mountainside. Then the power went out. One moment, there was the faint glow of homes scattered across the slope. The next, everything dropped into blackness. No lights, no fan hum, no electric buzz running through the village. Just darkness, and the rain beating down so loudly it filled every corner of every room. Only lightning cut through it now. Each flash lasted only a second, maybe less. Enough to show the slopes. Enough to show the rain coming sideways in sheets. Enough to reveal the water running fast over the ground before the darkness closed again. Inside their homes, the families stayed where they were. Children close to their parents. Doors shut, windows rattling. Everyone listening. Everyone waiting. Outside, the mountain had already taken on the full weight of the monsoon. The ground had soaked for days. The soil was no longer firm. It had become heavy, slick, uncertain. The villagers knew rain. They knew hills. They knew what the monsoon could do when it stayed too long. But that night felt different. The mountain, hidden in the dark, gave no sign of what it was doing. Only the sound of water. Only the low, constant violence of it. And then, sometime after midnight, another sound broke through. A bark, sharp, sudden, and out of place. Then another, and another. It was Rocky, a 5-month-old puppy, barking into the storm as if something was already moving, and he would not stop. At first, it sounded like a problem. A puppy barking in the middle of the night was enough to wake anyone. In a house already filled with the noise of the storm, it felt like too much. Lalit Kumar stirred awake, irritated, trying to ignore it. But the barking didn't stop. It wasn't playful. It wasn't random. It was sharp, fast, and relentless. Rocky was not settling down. He was getting louder. Lalit lay still for a moment, listening. The rain hammered the roof. The wind pushed against the walls. The whole house felt like it was being pressed into the hillside. And still, the puppy kept barking. Finally, he got up. He moved through the dark, following the sound down to the ground floor. He expected the dog to be at the door, maybe reacting to something outside. But Rocky wasn't facing the door. He was facing the wall, still barking, still refusing to stop. Lalit stepped closer, and then he saw it, a crack, running through the wall, not small, not surface level, deep enough to split it open. Water was already moving through it in dark lines. For a moment he stood there. The irritation was gone. It was replaced by something else, something colder. He turned toward the window and looked out into the storm. And in that moment, he understood why the dog wouldn't stop barking. Rocky was still barking behind him, loud, sharp, and relentless. Lalit leaned toward the glass and looked out into the storm. At first, there was nothing but rain, pitch black, the kind of darkness that makes distance disappear. He wiped the condensation away and stared harder, trying to force the night into focus. Then, he saw it. Not clearly. Not all at once. Just a movement in the dark where nothing should have been moving. He kept watching, and the shape changed. The mountainside was no longer still. Something up there had started to give way. Lalit stepped back from the window, went still. Rocky was still barking, but now the sound had changed. It was no longer annoying. It was urgent, alive with panic. Lalit turned and grabbed the puppy. Then he shouted for his family, "Get out! Now!" No explanation, no time for one. And outside, in the blackness above the village, the mountain was moving. His family woke confused, half sleeping, not yet understanding the danger. Lalit didn't wait for them to understand. He burst out into the storm with Rocky in his arms and ran straight to the next house, then the next, and the next. The rain was coming down in sheets. The path between homes had turned to mud. Every step he took, the ground tried to pull him back, but he kept running. He pounded on doors with his fists. He shouted until his throat burned. His voice was nearly swallowed by the rain, but the panic in it carried. Something in the way he was moving made people open their doors, made them listen. Wake up! Get out! Run! Some faces appeared in doorways with confusion written across them. Eyes not yet adjusted to the dark, minds not yet adjusted to the hour. One man started to ask a question. Lalit didn't stop to answer. There was no time for answers. The mountain didn't care about answers. In Siyathi, that was enough. People trusted each other. They had to. In a place where the nearest town was a hard road away, where debts were repaid in labor and favor, where the same mountainside that sheltered them could also swallow them, you learned to read a man's face. Lalit's face said something that didn't need words. When one man came screaming through the night, you didn't argue. You moved. Lights began to flicker on one by one. Doors flew open. Children were lifted out of beds. Parents grabbed them in the dark. No one packed anything. No one looked for shoes. No one had time. They just ran. Across mud, through rain, up the slope toward the Naina Devi temple on higher ground. An old man stumbled, was caught by the arms, kept moving. A child cried out and was passed, hand to hand, up the slope. Someone lost a sandal in the mud, left it, kept running. Rocky was still in Lalit's arms, still barking. 22 families, 63 people, all moving through the storm together, slipping, stumbling, climbing as fast as they could. The last of them was nearly there, nearly. And then, just as the last of them reached safety, the mountain finally answered. The sound came first. Not like thunder, not like wind, something deeper than both. Something that didn't come from the sky. It came from the ground itself, a low, grinding moan that built in seconds into a roar that swallowed everything else. A deep, violent roar tearing through the night. The ground itself began to shake. The air shifted. A smell moved up the slope ahead of what was coming. Wet stone, torn earth, something ancient and final. The kind of smell that has no name because no one who encountered it ever thought to give it one. Earth, rock, and mud tore loose from the hillside and slammed into Siyathi. Houses disappeared under the slide. Walls gave way. Roofs collapsed. Everything in its path was buried, crushed, erased. The slide didn't stop at the walls. It didn't slow for the doors. It moved through the village the way water moves through paper, without resistance, without negotiation, without pause. In seconds, nearly a dozen homes were gone. 6 swallowed so completely that by morning, you couldn't tell they had ever stood there. From the temple, the survivors could hear it happening in the dark, could hear their village being broken apart below them. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. The storm kept going, the mountain kept moving, and 63 people stood on higher ground in the dark, soaked through, barefoot, shaking, and listened to everything they had ever built disappear into the hillside below. Then it stopped. Just like that. The sound ended. The ground went still. The rain began to ease, and in its place, silence. The kind that arrives after something enormous. The kind that feels wrong because your body is still waiting for more. And then, as the storm began to ease and the first light of morning crept over the hill, they looked down at what was left. Their homes were gone. Their fields were gone. Their village was gone. The shape of the mountainside itself had changed overnight. Paths that had existed for generations, gone. Walls that had stood for decades, gone. The places where children had grown up, where grandparents had been buried, where marriages had happened and meals had been shared, buried under meters of rock and earth, but every single person was alive. No body had been pulled from the mud. No name was missing from the count. 63 people. All of them accounted for. And that is the part nobody could understand at first. Because before the mountain broke open, before the village was buried, before anyone else realized what was happening, a 5-month-old puppy refused to stop barking. Former village headman Desraj later said it plainly, it was the dog that saved them. News of what happened in Siyathi spread quickly. In the middle of a monsoon that had already brought so much loss, one village had a different ending. The state arrived with relief. But for the people of Siyathi, what mattered most could not be delivered in boxes. They were alive. Rocky didn't know he was saving a village. He was just doing what he had always done, warning the people he loved that something was wrong. The rain moved the mountain. A 5-month-old puppy moved the village. Some warnings don't come with time to think. Rocky had seconds. The mountain didn't wait. In 1862, Robert Smalls had a window just as narrow, a Confederate warship, a harbor full of enemy guns, and 17 people whose lives depended on him stealing that very warship. You can check out the video here. Thanks for watching.